I remember, coming and meeting you that day, and you were down in your basement and your daughter was visiting, right? And so you had some family here, but talk to me about, like you just said, you get the threats all the time, but you kind of quickly realized it was coming for the town.
We had listened, or they had been talking, for several days about the big system. And so then I watch a lot of Fox News, but we put on local news that day. And then I guess there was a warning in the morning, and we didn't even get excited about that one and didn't even go to the basement. Her dog had gotten lost the day before. Otherwise, she was going to leave Tuesday morning, and she wouldn't have been here with me. So I said, I guess that was supposed to happen. So anyway, then I don't know what time we been watching it, and so we decided we should go to the basement. And every time there'd been a severe thunderstorm warning issued for just even west of us, I always packed a bag and had my computer and checks and things and purse and always ready to go to the basement. And so we had that done. So we went down about 20 minutes before it hit. And then I couldn't get, I don't know what channel I was trying to get. And then I put on channel 5 and they were following it. And they talked like it was going to go between Greenfield and Orient. And so we stayed down there, and then he said, no, it's turned and it's going to go right for Greenfield. So I don't know, maybe 3 minutes before it hit, I had an old shower down that basement, and I always thought that would be a good spot so I had put a bench in there, and so we got in there and had these big pillows we put over our heads, and we could hear it hitting, and you just didn't know what you were going to come out to. So then when we come out of there, there was water spewing in the basement, and we couldn't go this one way. Our furnace was in the middle of that basement. It was an older basement. So we went around the one way, and then you went up about 5 steps, and there was a landing. And the guy next door was standing right outside of that. And I mean, the driveway was just full of, and he was barefoot. I think he was blown over there because he couldn't have walked that fast over there. So then we were able to get up and go through the house, and the second story was totally gone. The first story but there was water running all in the kitchen. And then we got to the front door and we couldn't get out. It was so much stuff. Well, there was young men all over helping right away. Yeah. So they came, they wanted to go check on the people next door because they didn't even know it was coming. Mm-hmm. And so they got them out. I don't know how they ended up not getting injured, but so then they came and got us, walked us across all that debris and out to the street. Mm-hmm. You just stare around and it's just like a nightmare. Yeah. And it was over in, maybe 3 minutes, 5 minutes at the most.
So quick.
So quick. Mm-hmm. It's just something I never want to go through again, but I guess, when you're 81 and we had some, because we used to live in Millard, mm-hmm. and we had tornadoes there 2 or 3 times, but never damage we seen one go over our house and touch down east of us, but it's just, you just don't know.
Yep, you just never know, yeah.
Where they're going to drop out or when they're going to drop. And then my son called and said, well, we dodged the bullet again because he lived on the other side of town. And I said, well, my house is gone. And he said, oh, no, what? So he jumped in his car and came straight west and then south, and he thought, what is she talking about? Because that whole side of town looks fine. Mm-hmm. But if he would have he lives by the Lutheran church, if he would have came down that highway, he would have seen it before,
Right.
So he was shocked. So it's just, I don't know. But things are going good.
Yeah. And obviously you had a lot of memories in that home. You said your son lives here, your grandchildren live here in town. Thankfully, like you said, they were totally okay. But what did it feel like you were able to recover a lot of things, but
Yes.
obviously you lost a lot of things
Yes.
as well. What did that feel like?
Well, I think you think of something every day that, I wish I had that, but you just have to go on. And I have found a few things, that I lost. And of course, you can go on Amazon or eBay and find a lot of things that, and I have replaced a few special little knickknacks that I had those little girls up there I had that because it reminded me of me and my two sisters. And so I was able to order that from eBay.
Nice. Yeah. And I remember that if it might be that flag that was up there that belonged to your husband, right?
Yes.
And people were able to find that.
My granddaughter found it.
Yes.
It was in the basement of the house next door. And that was in the family room. And that didn't have a second story above it, so it was like everything was caved in on it. And yet, there were a few things that were in that room that they found, like that big elephant up there. I had made that for my mother-in-law, and it was on the shelf thing where that flag was. So it was clear on the north wall, and I think Lindsay said she found it in that basement too. And it's like I had pictures on the wall of each of the great-grandkids, and each year I would just put their new ones in the same frame. And my great-granddaughter that I'm going to do her scrapbooks for, somehow somebody found it, because when I was going through stuff, here was her picture and everybody else's is gone.
Wow.
It's
So
just,
hers is still there.
and then like in the backyard, we had a shed and a garage. Well, the shed, I think, was totally gone. And here in all that debris in the backyard it's sitting out there in the back, this leprechaun that my mom had made in ceramics in 1976, I think. And it had one little chip out of it. But I mean, something like that would just take a board to break it. And
so
there it was
strange.
amidst all that. So you just...
So strange. Yeah. Some things got swept away,
Yes.
swept miles away. Other things were just laying there.
I know. When I saw on TV this morning, those people digging through there, it just...
Takes you back.
Yeah, it does.
Yep. And speaking of that, obviously there was a lot of work to be done in the days that followed. And you ended up moving to Fontenelle, right?
Yes.
For up until this past February.
Yes.
So talk about just how much work went into the recovery.
Well, Samaritan's Purse was great, and they were able to get, like my husband's roll-top desk. They were able to get it out, and they got the curio cabinets out. And it's amazing the glass wasn't broken in them. And then the only place I could find to live was they had converted the old nursing home to apartments. So I rented one of those for... been about 10 months probably. And it was only I think there were 3 rooms. So it was a big adjustment, but I made it through.
You did.
I bought just a recliner and slept in it, because the one room, they called it a 2-bedroom, but the room that was one of the bedrooms had no windows in it. And somebody told me it used to be the shower room. So, and then the room that was supposed to be the bedroom, I made like a living room. And so, I mean, it was...
Quite an adjustment.
Yeah, it was.
But you had a lot of support, obviously,
Yeah.
from your family, and you were pretty lucky, too, with insurance, right?
Yes.
Didn't have
Yeah.
some of the struggles that a lot of people had.
Yeah, I did really good up until the end, and I thought I was supposed to get a certain amount of money, and they're not giving me all of that. So, but I'll make do.
Yeah. Thankfully that you were still able
Yes.
to get a good chunk of
Yes,
it, and
right.
not run into too many issues.
And when you're, the age I am, my house was paid for, which is another big plus, because a lot of them had to pay off a mortgage
on top of
before they could use money toward a new house. So I'm sure some of them have mortgages.
And so since you have moved back, your house looks a lot different. You were kind of got to redesign every piece of it, even though that's something that you didn't want to do.
No.
But you were able to sort of bring the dream to life, and now you're back. But just even around town, what is it like just driving around every day, driving down your street? Not the same amount of homes that there once was. It's
and
just
the
different.
trees,
The trees.
all the trees.
Yes.
Because this was such a pretty tree-lined street. And it's hard to remember what houses used to sit there or who used to live on that street. And there's, because over on the street next to me, or down on First Street, evidently some of them bought extra lots too. So I can't even picture what used to be there. And I know a lot of people say that the landmarks, a lot of them are gone. So it's it's an adjustment, but so they're having a big celebration Wednesday.
That'll be really nice.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing to drive around and see all the work that has been done. I know that you never thought that you would leave here. Of course,
No.
You've lived here, you said 47 years in that home.
Right.
With children and grandchildren in town. And do you feel like, not just physically, but just in sort of more of a metaphorical sense, do you feel like the town has changed at all?
Oh, I think it probably has. I mean, with all the changes, and now it's kind of like this side of town is the new side of town.
Yeah, all new builds.
Yeah, because there's very few structures. Well, there are structures but they've all gotten new roofs, new windows, new siding, so they all look new too, and so it really has transformed the town, I guess.
Yeah, it has.
And I said, we were lucky, really, because the school wasn't hit, the churches weren't hit, and we only lost 3 businesses, which, were the Subway and a car repair place and the car wash and a laundromat. I guess there were 4, that people could get by with. We still had the grocery store, and the square wasn't hit, the main part of town. Yeah. That would have really changed things. I know when the guy came and talked from Parkersburg, I think, if a town gets, I don't know how they come back. If I think I saw this morning where some town in Kansas last night got hit. And I don't know if it destroyed the whole town and I know there was one a couple years ago, either in Missouri or Kansas, and I don't know how a town would even start over. Yeah. I know it's been a big struggle for the city, the cost.
Moving forward, yes.
And all the infrastructure that has to be redone.
Yeah, definitely.
Really taxed them, I'm sure.
Definitely.
Because everybody's wanting them to get your lots marked. And
Yep.
So
yeah, I know there's been a lot of struggles over the last year. What do you think's been the most challenging part about all of this?
I don't know. I guess, you want it to move faster, but everything's got to go in a certain order.
Yeah, that's true.
So it just takes time, but
yeah, definitely.
So it's like, I know the other day I was thinking, well, it's like a whole year of my life was wasted, but you can't say it was wasted, I guess. Things came out of it.
Just look different.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, but when you're this age, every year counts.
It's true. It's true.
Every day counts.
And you've not only have you dealt with the aftermath of the tornado, but you were just telling me you had pneumonia a couple months ago. You broke your arm.
Yes.
I mean, just one thing after another, and yet you're still here, standing.
I know.
So
you just. Maybe it was God's way of telling me to slow down.
Yeah.
Because I'm not.
That's not easy to do.
Not one to sit around.
Yeah. No.
But it's just hard starting over when you're 81 years old. So
never thought that's something that you think you know when you were that age you like things to be the way that you've always had them.
And I used to think sitting in my house that oh, maybe I should look for a ranch-style house. And then one would come up for sale, and I'd think, should I go buy it? And then I'd say, no, I really like my house.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to stay here, let the kids deal with all this mess when I die. The Lord took care of that. My grandson-in-law said, you just had a giant garage sale.
Yeah.
You got paid for that stuff that you didn't even have to mess with selling.
That's true. That's
Because
very
my
true.
husband, like I said, had died 5 years ago, and I never had gotten rid of his stuff.
Right, right.
That shed was full.
Yep, yep.
So I guess, I don't know, terrible way to clean stuff out, but
Can't help it, right?
No.
So it's a ranch style up here. There's just not like a second story.
Right.
Like this is the
Right.
main floor.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you. Because I remember you had talked about, a lot of people in town ended up putting in like ground level storm shelters. That was
Yes,
something that people were considering.
a lot of people took under their front porches, and I didn't even think of that
Yeah.
at the time, and made like, they put a door into it from their basement.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
So, and I thought, oh, that was something I would have done if I'd have thought of it.
Sure.
Or if I had seen it done before they got my porch
Right.
all filled in with dirt.
But the basement is definitely a,
Yes,
a
so-
non-negotiable.
So I've got underneath the steps down there, I've got a couple chairs sitting and some cushions. and
Okay.
so that'll be my go-to spot.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know if it'll be as safe as the one I had, but you
Still
don't know.
something. Yeah, you just don't know.
Just like the house next to me was a big 2-story house, and it was gone. I mean, it took the whole thing. And it had a hot tub from the neighbors was in their basement. And I looked down there and I thought, where would they have been safe? But they were up on the main floor. I don't know how they
Yeah, it's just
how they
incredible.
survived.
Yeah.
And we had 2 big snow plows, one in the front yard and one the blades.
right.
And then on my pickup, which sat in the driveway, was one of those big culverts.
Yep, I remember that.
Yeah.
And it flew from somewhere else.
About 2 blocks over is the county yard. And so I had 2 of those snowplow blades, and I think there were several others. And I said, I can't imagine them things flying through the air.
Yeah.
And then in the house across the street, which they didn't rebuild, so there's used to be 5 houses on that side, and now there's 3.
Okay.
And in their front porch was one of those big culverts was wedged in there.
Yes, that's
Somebody
right.
thought that somebody had put it in there, but nope,
Just
the
flew.
tornado drove it in there.
Yeah. Yeah, it was some of the strongest wind speeds that have
That's
ever
what they
been
said.
recorded in a
That's what we
tornado.
read.
And stuff not only flew all over town, but flew up to Minnesota,
Yes.
and you just can't even
Well, you just
imagine
wonder
that.
where it all ends.
Yeah, right? Right.
My biggest thing that I lost that I was upset about was all my Christmas stuff.
Yeah. You
I
spent
mean-
years collecting that.
Yes, some of it was from when we first got married. And then this friend, you could go partway up my steps. I think those big old steps helped hold the house up.
Yeah.
And he was able to climb up there while he threw down a couple of tubs of Christmas stuff. Well, all it was lights that you can replace anywhere.
Not like the actual
No.
decor that you
Right.
put around the house. Yeah.
And I had a willow tree nativity set, and I was able to replace that all now through eBay. And then
yeah.
I had started this collection of Hallmark Mary's Angels ornaments, and actually it was the year my first great-grandchild was born. So she always wanted those when something happened to me. Well, they were all gone. And I found them on eBay, and this lady in California had the complete set.
Oh, wow.
So I've got all them now to put on my tree next
Yeah.
year. This last year I just had they had a big Christmas thing for all the tornado people, and they gave us trees. And I just took a 4-foot one because that's all I had room for in that apartment. But,
Yeah.
so I didn't use that stuff, but
Wow, that's so cool that you were able to replace a lot of that stuff on
know.
eBay. You wouldn't think
I
that it
know.
would be out there or that anybody
Yes.
would own it, and then they're selling it too.
yeah.
Like, how
and
crazy is that?
how she had one from 30-some years ago,
Just like yours.
but maybe she worked at a Hallmark and had, I don't know. but
Yeah, that's incredible.
yeah.
Wow.
So
That's
those
super
2
cool.
things I was able to replace, but
Yeah.
some of it there's no way I will.
Yeah.
And I had just the year before redone my mantle for Christmas, and it looked so pretty. I had all these pictures, but so I'll just have to start new memories in here.
Yeah, definitely. We've already started
Yes.
started doing that, and
I know when my granddaughter and her two daughters came for dinner Sunday. We used to always have Sunday dinner. The kids always came for Sunday dinner, and you know, even to them, it's like, this really isn't Grandma's house. But then they started playing hide and go seek. They were
Just
one
like
was
the old
hiding from
days.
the other, and
yeah,
and then even my granddaughter got in on it. And I thought, oh my goodness. But then my one granddaughter and her family lived here in town. And about a month before I moved, they moved up to Waukee. So they don't live here by me anymore,
yeah.
which was really handy.
to
Like when
happen.
I'd go out of town, then my granddaughter would water my plants. And so, but I have a lot of good church friends. and
Yes,
So that's been a big help.
definitely. Yeah, they've
So-
given you a lot of support
Yes.
through all of this.
Yes.
And have you met new people in town through all this too?
No, I really haven't.
No.
And I see on the two Habitat for Humanity homes, the one that's getting one, I've never heard of her, so I
Really?
don't know if she's new to town or if she was living here before it.
You don't expect that in a small town. You
I
think you
know.
kind of know everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's been a lot move in. And once you don't have kids in school, it's,
Different. I think my last question for you is, before the storm and after, what is your favorite part about living here?
oh gosh. Well, like I said, we've lived here 47 years. We moved here from Omaha, so it was an adjustment coming to a small town, but I would not want to move back to a city now for anything. I mean, we've always been happy here, and I think a town is what you make it and what you put into it. And like I said, you know, our church we've been to that church now since we moved here.
Yeah.
And having faith in God really gets you through things like this.
The
So,
people and just
Yes.
it's not easy, but
No.
you've done an amazing job getting through all of this and
was-
you've always stayed very positive, which I really admire about you. Even that next day,
well, thank you.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, you can't change it, so, and there's no sense, I guess, dwelling on the what ifs. I know some people have had a hard time dealing with it, really, but.
understandably so.
And then somebody said, you know, when you're going to build a new house, you usually plan for it for a year. But when you got to make all those decisions,
At a moment's notice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that was tough. But I guess that kept me going too.
Yeah.
You know,
Give you
going
something
here
to
and
work
there.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would get all these books and go through them and get ideas. And like that thing in there, I designed that and then gave the plans to him, and he built it just like that.
Yeah.
So
Oh, and it's such a nice house. It really
So-
came together so nicely.
yeah, I'm really happy with it.
Yeah,
It's come out really good.
it has.
So
Perfect.
it's been a tough year, but I think it's going to get better.
It is. It is. Now you're back and settled, and
Yes.
and I think it'll be so amazing now to see every single year all the
Yes.
all the changes that continue to be made.
Right.
Like you said, they'll replant the trees. Those
Yes.
will come back in, and the landscaping, and
Yes.
these things take time. But
I know. Yeah, that's
lot
my
to be
next
grateful for.
project is then that lot next to me. While I was on vacation, somebody piled a whole bunch of big blocks of cement out there. So now I've got to get rid of that. And so I'm going to have that hauled away. And then I've got a friend that does landscaping work, so I'm going to call him. And I think I'll just plant that to grass. And
yeah,
then I'll probably get me a rider mower. And
yeah, you can do all your own landscaping.
on our old house, the whole backyard was deck. And then we had two beautiful trees back there. So it was such a great place for the great-grandkids to play.
Yeah.
You didn't even have to put sunscreen on them. And then they had these riding toys, and we had like a 2-level deck. So I built ramps so they could go up and around it. So they just spent so much time out there.
Yeah.
Well, then just last year, I had to have the one main beautiful tree cut down, and it just ruined the whole deck. Well, I guess
It
now I
didn't
don't have
matter
to worry
so
about
much
that.
anyway. Yeah.